In recent years, whistleblowers have received greater attention. Time magazine made 3 whistleblowers its Persons of the Year in 2002 in honor of their exposing scandals at Enron, the FBI, and WorldCom. But for many whistleblowers, a recent New England Journal of Medicine study showed whistleblowers pay a tremendous personal cost for their disclosures, and almost 82% of them experience retaliation from employers, including being harassed, blackballed, and fired. In addition, whistleblowers face social ostracism from coworkers and undergo stressful psychological strain. As Mark Twain once wrote, "Character is doing the right thing when nobody's looking." There are too many people who think that the only thing that's right is to get by, and the only thing that's wrong is to get caught. Whistleblowers serve an important role to both their employers and to the general public by bringing to light an employer's ethical or even legal violations. Because of this, federal and state laws exist to protect certain whistleblowers from retaliation by an outed employer. The whole point of a whistleblower's claim is to correct the actions engaged in by the institution that damage public safety, waste tax dollars, or violate the public trust in government.
In recent years, whistleblowers have helped expose unlawful car emissions at Volkswagen, the $900 billion fraud at Theranos perpetrated by Elizabeth Holmes. Whistleblower lawsuits have recovered more than $60 billion in federal funds and have helped prevent another $1 trillion in losses since 1986. Whistleblowers have also had a long cinematic history. Meryl Streep, George Clooney, Russell Crowe, and Al Pacino have all played courageous versions of real-life whistleblowers. But in the real world, whistleblowers like Charles Lewis Jr. showed extraordinary courage to report the truth and do something that was against all of his best interests. He reported a $150 million fraud by one of America's largest home health care providers, Amedisys Home Health and Hospice Care, which had unlimited financial and legal resources to destroy his life. It took guts and a determination so strong that if he hadn't done it, he would have never been able to live with himself. Here's Charles Lewis Jr. to tell us what it was like.
I was a police officer for 18 years. I got hurt, severely hurt, and the city decided to retire me based on my injuries. I didn't want to retire. I've always wanted to be a policeman, and I didn't want to give it up. As a police officer, I saw some things that were irregular, and I wanted to report that because I thought things were wrong, and the billing issues were uncomfortable. I was uncomfortable with the billing issues I saw. Before I reported this, I thought about it for a very long time, and I was quite concerned with how I was going to report it, any type of retaliation, or my future. I think whistleblowers are important to our society. It gives us an opportunity or an action to go forward with things that are wrong. I think if you see things that are wrong, that you're uncomfortable with, ask someone about it. If you're uncomfortable with that, go to someone who has more knowledge than you and report it. Looking back, I'm glad I reported these improper actions. If I had to do it again, I would.
In this insider exclusive network TV special, Justice in America, Whistleblower Charles Lewis's Story, our news team goes behind the headlines to visit with Bill Hurlock, managing partner of Mueller Law, and his client, Charles Lewis Jr., to tell how they successfully settled the Amedisys whistleblower lawsuit by Amedisys paying $150 million to the federal government for violation of the False Claims Act. Bill's goals are not only to get justice for his clients, but to make sure that everyone is treated with equal respect and dignity as guaranteed under the Constitution of the United States. His amazing courtroom skills and headline-grabbing success rate continue to provide his clients with the results they need and the results they deserve. This is the Insider Exclusive, live from New Jersey. It is my great pleasure to introduce Bill Hurlock to the show. Welcome to the show, Bill.
Thank you very much, Steve. It's a pleasure to be here.
And good to see you. You know, a nice cold morning in New Jersey. Huh?
It's tourist season in New Jersey, as we say.
So you are the managing partner at Mueller Law Firm here in New Jersey. What kind of cases, what is your typical practice, workload that you take on?
We have a very diverse group of cases here at the New York, New Jersey office. We have whistleblower cases under the False Claims Act, whether it be federal or state. Some cities like New York also have a False Claims Act, so we represent whistleblowers in that context. We also have a fair amount of commercial litigation as well, and we also do a lot of mass tort work on the plaintiff's side, particularly here in New Jersey.
Once a person gets a law degree, they can practice any type of law, but you have a tendency to practice this key Tom cases, these whistleblower cases. Why do you take them on?
Well, I'm a former federal prosecutor, so it allows me to still wear my prosecutorial hat in the private sector of the law business, if you will. And these are cases that are very important to me. I have a lot of respect for whistleblowers who come forward. As you know, it's not an easy task. And it's a privilege to represent the whistleblowers in that context.
Let's talk about your client here, Charles Lewis Jr. Who is he?
A very nice gentleman who has been through quite a bit. He served with the police department out in California and unfortunately was injured in the line of duty.
He was a motorcycle police officer, right?
Correct. And had to go through physical therapy, Steve, as a result of his injuries. And unfortunately was not able to return to active duty of the injuries he sustained. And to his credit, he took another phase of his life and became a physical therapy assistant, a PTA.
He probably went into the physical therapy profession because of what he had to go through, right?
Exactly. And you'll get to meet him shortly. And he is a gentleman who really wants to serve others and is really a credit to what he's done.
So this case is called a key Tom case, a whistleblower case. Tell our audience a little bit about what a whistleblower is and what they do.
Yes, and there's different contexts. Obviously, we're hearing more about it nowadays, but in this context, it's under the Federal False Claims Act. This statute was enacted back in 1863. What's going on at that point in time?
With Lincoln.
Exactly. The American Civil War is at its height. And unfortunately, the Union Army is getting mules that are broken down, rifles that won't fire in the rain, shoddy shoes, what have you. And in essence, what this law does is allow a whistleblower, someone who has information that the government is getting inferior product that they're paying for. And if they have that information, they can file a suit on behalf of the government to regain those ill-gotten gains from the defendant.
Now, when you say file a suit on behalf of the government, let's talk about the procedure. Somebody like Charles comes to you as a lawyer and says, I have information that something illegal is going on. You accumulate the information, you gather it all together, and what do you do with that initially? Do you send it to the Department of Justice to see if they want to pick it up?
Yes, it's an excellent question. What we do first, and we take this obligation very serious. We investigate the allegations ourselves to the best we can with the ability that we have to get information. We try to verify that these facts, allegations, have some teeth to them, that there's some substance. Once we do that, Steve, we go ahead and prepare what's called a disclosure statement, which is where you take all the information that is provided to you, the research that you have as well, potential witnesses, exhibits, documents. You put that together in a document and you present that to the government.
Okay, let me stop you there. Why do you present it to the government? Why not go alone on this, like a private attorney general act?
The statute requires that if you're going to use the statute, and the statute has a lot of teeth to it, it's been amended several times since 1863. If you want to go that route, you have to provide information to the government before you file your lawsuit. So the theory being that the government is aware of the allegations and they can also investigate themselves.
And they can bring to the table a lot of resources,
yes,
to pursue this, right?
Excellent point, because in this context, you've got the full force of the United States government.
Which means then the law firm that brought this to the government first kind of sits on the sideline as a team member, but waits for the government's investigation, right?
To a certain degree, yes. I'm from Jersey, so I'm impatient, but and with my prosecutorial background, I often try to help assist the investigation, whether we're drafting subpoenas or we're providing, information.
They welcome that?
Depending on the office, yes. We are very fortunate. We have cases all over the country, and we have established very good relationships and a nice rapport with many of the offices.
When Charles could not return to his initial love of his profession of being a police officer, he chose being a physical therapist. And he went to work for a company. What's the name of the company?
Yeah, so Charles was a physical therapist assistant for Amedisys, is the name of the company.
Okay, and what did he observe? Why is this case even here?
Charles had observed some, what he found to be potential billing irregularities.
How would he have gotten a hold of those?
He actually, by being a physical therapist assistant, and he'll tell you a little bit more about how the schedules work, so he's actually getting schedules for patients and treatments and things of that nature. And as a result of his place in the chain in the company, he would know from a treatment standpoint as to what could have been rendered or not, and then from a billing standpoint as to how that claim was processed.
He saw a lot of people getting unnecessary work scheduled, right?
Those were one of his allegations.
Everybody knows that if you go against report your employer, that there's going to be retaliation. Where did he decide that he needed to do this, even at great risk to his job?
I often see this a lot with whistleblowers. And in that initial interview, when I meet them, I always say, I'm taking off my lawyer hat now and I'm putting on my citizen hat. And I'm grateful that you're coming forward with whatever allegations they may be. And it could be in the healthcare. We've seen it in student loans. We've seen it in mortgages. We've seen it in defense contracting cases. It runs the gambit, whatever federal funds or state funds that are out there. And these individuals are really well-intentioned. They're doing this for the right reason. They see something is improper and they want to have it stopped. They're not, you get the mantra all the time that, whistleblowers, they're just in it for money, they're just in it for fame or whatever. I assure you that's not the case at all. I've had conversations with many of my clients, and we take this obligation very seriously, Steve, that I'll get a call on a Saturday or I'll get a call late at night where there's an issue that's come up and the person needs someone to talk to. And they feel very strongly about what they're doing to stop whatever conduct is occurring.
When Charles came to you, and you filed you gave this information to the government, what kind of repercussions did he receive, and did his employer know that he had filed this claim?
Not necessarily, because the way that the statute works, Steve, is that the case is what we call under seal. So after you make that disclosure that I just discussed, and then you go into court and you actually file a complaint, it's filed under seal under the statute. The only individuals that know about it are obviously the relator, the relator's attorneys, and whatever government attorneys you're working with. The defendants don't necessarily know that something has been filed at that point.
Okay, will they ever find out?
They might.
They might find out after adjudication of the case or before the adjudication?
It depends on the process. And again, oftentimes because it's under seal, the government attorneys are going to need to petition the court to do what we call a partial lift of the seal. And that may be because the government may be in a position where they want to talk to the defendants. This is procedurally now. And they can't even do that unless they have a court order to lift the seal. And when they do that, while they may not disclose who the individual is, oftentimes defendants can tell just by a time frame or an office location or both who that individual is. They'll narrow it down in their own mind.
Did this ever happen with Charles in the process?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay, so they were able to keep his identity secret.
Until the very end when it was settled, correct.
Okay, and what kind of legal strategies does a law firm like your own, besides helping the Department of Justice, if they take the case on, what legal strategies do you, other than helping them, what do you have to do?
Well, and again, it kind of runs the gamut depending on what the scenario is. But oftentimes we can also go forward on what we call a non-intervene basis, where the government does not step into the case, but we'll go ahead and prosecute the case as ourselves.
As a private attorney general, basically.
Essentially, yes.
How successful are those cases? I mean, does the government turn down good cases where they could collect, find money and collect money? Do they turn them down?
In our opinion, there's been some cases that we wish that they would have pursued because we thought they were very good cases. Now, the reasons for the declination run the gambit. It could be that there's just not enough resources. It could be it's an area of the law that a particular United States Attorney's Office doesn't have a lot of experience in. So there's different factors that come in other than the merits of the case per se for a declination.
Right. There were other people that filed a claim, a whistleblower claim against the same company. Tell us that experience.
Yeah. So because of the way the statute works, as I said, it's under seal. Originally, the statute had a 60-day lookout period, if you will, where the government's allowed, they know of the case, and then they can decide what we call intervene or take the case over. Unfortunately, because of resources and other issues, that 60-day period can take 3 to 6 years sometimes for the government to decide whether or not they want to intervene. During that intervening period of 3 to 6 years, other relators may come forward with allegations because remember, the case is under seal. So these other relators don't necessarily know that there's been other filings.
And the government doesn't notify them?
Not necessarily. Again, they'd have to get a partial lift of the seal to do so.
Now, there are two reasons. Well, actually, there's one reason why a person blows the whistle on something illegal is their conscience feels that this should be stopped.
Correct.
The government has an incentive in rewarding people to come forward because oftentimes they're retaliated against where they compensate a whistleblower fee. What fee does that range from?
Yeah, so the depending on the statute and the jurisdiction, because right now there's approximately 26 states, I lose track, that have their own False Claims Act case, in addition to the federal statute. There's also some, the city of New York, they have a whistleblower statute as well. So the range goes from anywhere from 10%, it could be 15, it could be 20, and then it also changes, Steve, in terms of, is the case intervened? How much help was the relator to the investigation? Was it not intervened? If you go forward on a non-intervened basis without the government support, but you're still successful in getting a resolution or a settlement, obviously the percentages are higher because the risk was higher.
What was the end result of this case?
This case ended up being settled. There was a press release at the Department of Justice.
Meaning the defendant company came forward and said, okay, we agree to pay X amount of dollars. I think it was, $150 million or something.
Correct, around that.
But they are, I think in these cases, they're put kind of like on probation, if you will, right?
Depending on the settlement terms. And the settlement agreement is public. That's a public document that's out there.
And this was classified as Medicare and Medicaid fraud, wasn't it?
Oftentimes, these types of cases, particularly in the healthcare field, have to deal, again, under the statute, there has to be a government dollar attached to it. So Medicare, Medicaid, TRICARE is another area sometimes that you see, which is the military component of a health benefit. The Federal Employees Health Benefit Program is another area, that services men and women who work for the government on the civilian side. So the different government dollars attached to the statute, and that's how the recoveries are made.
All right, good. Well, congratulations on a successful settlement.
Well, thank you.
We have with us your client, Charles Lewis, right now, so let's bring him on right now. It is my great pleasure to introduce Charles Lewis. Welcome to the show, Charles.
Thank you.
I understand that you were a police officer for
Hermosa Beach Police.
Hermosa Beach Police for 18 years.
18 years.
And you couldn't go back to the force, so you became a physical therapist, right?
Yes.
And how long had you been on that job before you noticed that there was something going on which was probably illegal and wrong?
It was about a year and a half before I decided that something was going on that I was uncomfortable with.
And how did this come to your attention?
I was seeing patients regularly. As an assistant, I see patients after they're evaluated, and I do treatment sessions with them.
So what was called to your attention that something might illegal be going on?
Every patient that I was seeing was evaluated for the Balance for Life program, which is a fall prevention program. I thought that every patient, regardless of diagnosis, was in this program, and that concerned me.
Okay, you saw that money was being basically stolen from the government, right?
Well, I was uncomfortable with what was going on with the treatment session.
So what did you do, and did you realize that you might be retaliated against if you started making waves?
Well, I actually got on the internet and I started looking at the best way to address what my concerns were. And I found an attorney who specialized in that particular area.
And that's Bill.
That's Bill.
Okay. And initially, when you came to him, did he have a lot of information available, or do you have to dig it out?
Charles had quite a bit of information, actually. We supplemented with our own research, but Charles had a lot of knowledge.
Was there a point in time when you thought that you might be retaliated against, you might lose your job?
I was concerned about that. That's one reason I went to Bill. I was afraid that had the public known, physical therapy is pretty small, that I may not get another job because they were concerned about my coming out or rolling on someone like that.
How do you see the justice system working now? Now that you've been through the case, it's already closed.
I like the way it has happened.
Right. And most of the billings are on Medicare or Medicaid, aren't they?
Most of my patients were Medicare.
Yeah, so the government's paying for it.
Right.
Right. I was watching a 60-minute, I think it was like, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and the insurance companies don't even complain about some of the fraud that goes on in the healthcare industry because, hey, they're getting paid.
Yeah.
That's all they care about. Looking back on what you did, are you still in the industry?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Has anybody ever said anything to you about what you did?
No, not one time.
And it hasn't affected you negatively at all?
None at all, no.
Okay. Do you have a message you want to send to the healthcare industry about not doing these kinds of things?
Well, I work with some very intelligent, good people, and I believe that they see things that they're uncomfortable with. They should ask questions about it and not be afraid to go forward if it's wrong.
And you mentioned Bill did a great job for you.
Did a great job. Mm-hmm.
What specifically did he do that was so fantastic for you?
Well, I felt at ease that I was doing the right thing and that I would not be retaliated against. If I was, he would help me with that.
Yeah, well, that's comforting, because I'm sure as we talked before, that happens quite a bit.
Unfortunately, it does.
So you're doing physical therapy down in San Diego.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, all right, very good. Anything else you want to add?
No, I was nervous doing this. I thought about it a great deal before I made the phone call to Bill. I'm glad I did.
Okay, well, you did the right thing, and I want to thank you for being on this show.
Well, thank you for having me.
Talk to us a little bit in general about whistleblower suits, because in today's day and age, we hear right now there's a whistleblower that filed a claim with the government, went through the proper procedures. They want to out his identity. Do they have anonymity? Can they retain their identity? Because otherwise this would discourage people from coming forward when they see something illegal being done.
It's an excellent point, and as you indicated, Steve, it's a hot topic right now, right? No, there is no guarantee of anonymity. And actuality, in the previous administration, that rule was changed. When we first started practicing, and I've been practicing now for over 20 years, if the cases were filed, they're filed under seal. We all saw the movie with Russell Crowe playing the insider. Yes. Sure.
And as you well know, I've covered a number of these type of cases, but oftentimes the people who come forward are basically persecuted. They are bullied. And I know of one case where somebody was deposed so many times, they eventually got ill and died. They harassed them. What can you as a lawyer do to prevent that happening to a client?
It's an unfortunate circumstance, and it does occur quite a bit. The statute itself has some protective provisions for individuals engaging in protected whistleblowing activity. So there's what's called Section H under the statute, and that's the statute that protects individuals in the employment context from those types of harassment types of charges.
You've handled other cases, other whistleblower cases. Some people have been retaliated against and fired. Now they have another claim for wrongful termination, right?
That's correct.
Have you been successful in getting some sort of compensation for them?
Extremely successful, and we fight very hard for that because of the principle that's behind it.
Yeah, I met a couple one time She was a research scientist in Northern California. She blew the whistle on some program that was being underfunded or whatever. And unfortunately, because of the turmoil that it caused internally in her house, in her marriage, they ended up getting divorced. What is the characteristics that you generally see of whistleblowers?
It really runs the gambit. These are very strong individuals. They have to be, and they have an idea of what they're going through. And when we meet them initially, we sit down and talk with them, and we explain the process. And here's what you can expect. Here's what we might be able to do to help you in that process, such as bringing a Section H claim. So you do see quite a, again, most of the people, if not all of my clients, I've been very fortunate over the years to have the privilege of representing them, are in it for the reason that they want to see the bad activity stop, not necessarily that they're in it for the dollar, which is what you often see in the media, which is unfairly portrayed.
So your advice to anybody who is watching this show that may be aware of something illegal happening that the government is involved with, a government dollar, is they go to a lawyer that represents whistleblowers, right?
Correct. And hopefully somebody who actually has the experience in the area. Because this is becoming a more prominent field, there's a lot of lawyers out there that are jumping in saying that they know this area. This is such a nuanced practice, Steve. It has so many trap doors. We're constantly those of us with a significant experience are constantly keeping up to try and keep up with the changes in the law.
Working for the U.S. Attorney's Office before, which you did, correct?
I was actually with the Department of Justice, with the Independent Counsel's Office.
You know all of these trapdoors.
I know a lot of them. I'm fortunate having that training and serving the country in that capacity to bring that perspective to my clients in this capacity.
When you have somebody come to you has a claim that might be classified as a key Tom case, how do you select the clients that you eventually represent?
We're very fortunate because we have a good reputation that we do have a lot of individuals approaching us. And as part of our intake system, we vet the client. We always meet ahead of time, face to face. We have several telephone interviews as well, have them send us the material. And then we do our own research to verify that the claims have some teeth to them. And then we go forward based on that analysis.
There is no way for you to have known that there were 6 other similar claims filed against the same defendant.
That's correct, because they were under seal.
You would think that the government would alert people to that,
Depending on the timeline in the process, they try to do that as you get further along. But initially, before we file or in that pre-disclosure stage, as I indicated, it's impossible for us to know.
Okay, I want to thank you for being on the show. Keep up the good work.
I appreciate it, Steve. Thank you for the opportunity to meet with you and discuss these important issues.
Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.